to the video, everyone. So in this video we are going to first of all understand about how to get started with Azure portal, the cloud analytics portal, and what exactly data engineering is. Okay, so the very first of all, let me just introduce myself to you. I am Vaibhav. I am working as a corporate trainer, and I have been training on courses like Transact SQLs, working on SaaS engine, advanced SQL infrastructure setups. When we talk about the Azure portal courses, there are multiple courses which support you for data engineering, that is DP203, DP900, which is about the data fundamentals that we should be aware about, and the DP300, which is also an associate level of exam, which is on Azure SQL solutions, and DP600, which is on Microsoft Fabric tool. Apart from these, I have worked with the ETL tools like Alteryx, SSMS, Airflows. If you wish, you can connect me on the LinkedIn as well, where I am also sharing some of the insights about multiple ETL tools, some data engineering concepts, some data visualization concepts, and all over there. Okay, so let's go ahead with the very first objective of our data engineering. So in this module, we are going to understand about 4 important points. The very first, what exactly is data engineering? How can we deal with that? What is the platform overview? What are the services that Azure gives? Okay, so the very basic information about Azure and how to get started with it on the cloud analytics portal. So we are going to start with that, and if you have any questions, you can park that in the comments as well, which I will be reviewing it time by time so that you can get your doubts clarified, and if you wish, you can also connect me through the LinkedIn. Okay, so very first concept which we have is basically the ETL concept. Everywhere when you will be working in the domain of data engineering, ETL concept is going to be used. Whether you are working in a Synapse analytics, whether you are working with ADF, whether you are working with data factories, data bricks, or whether you are working with Microsoft Fabric or SSMS, Power BI, any tools you are working with, this concept is going to be a repetitive concept in the domain of data engineering. So you should be aware about this, how this is working, and what are the components present inside it. Okay, so the formula of or you can say the full form of this ETL stands for extract, transform, and load. We will try to understand this from the very basics, since I am putting every content for the beginners as well. So we will try to understand everything just by the word itself, because word itself define the meaning of it. Extracting means what? We are trying to extract multiple things out of it. Like there can be one files present, this can be one database present, this can be another data source present. So all these three which contains data are first of all called as data source in the domain of data engineering. Okay, and when we connect multiple data sources in order to extract some information of it and get that at one specific location, that is called as the process of extracting, where we extract the information from different data sources and we collect it at one specific location. Okay, so that is my extracting. The second point, the second term basically, which is called as transformation. So transformation stands for two different things. The very first is the movement of data. When we say our data has been moved from point A to point B, that means our data has been transferred from A to point B. Okay, right. Similarly, the second point which transform basically says is that when we come up to manipulate something, when we come up to update some information inside any data set or do any changes, some upgradation, is called as basically the transformation, right? So when we collect our data, all the data, and do some transformation on it, it is called as the transform process, which is the second step of ETL. And the third is basically the loading of data, which means once you have prepared your data cleaning has been done, whatever updates is required, you have performed that, you can load your data set in any of the tool in order to analyze the entire pattern out of that data. Okay, so let's see the definition of it. ETL tool enables the integration strategies by allowing companies to gather the data from multiple data sources and consolidate it into a single centralized location. So it's the same thing which we have seen, extracting from different data sources, transforming them, and then loading to one single source. That is called as the entire process of ETL. And even if you are working as a data analyst, you should be aware about this ETL concept, since we are using that in SSMS and Power BI as well. Let's take let's take an example in order to understand this ETL process in a very simple manner. Okay, so let's say you have a data collectively present of a city that stores a data of weather insights. Okay, so what happen is you get some weather data from any of the IoT devices or any physical hard drives, any different types of devices. From there we collect the data, right? And then that same data is basically collected at one single location, because you will not just have a data coming from one city, it will be coming from different cities as well. So you cannot analyze each and every process again and again for the same file. In order to automate the task, in order to reduce your workload, you need to break this entire task in one single task itself, right? So you need to collectively get the data out of all the cities. Then the second step, once the extraction has been done, the second step is basically the transformation, where you get some data in the format of timestamps, or you get some data in the form of list of cities, list of states, the pin codes and all. So you need to remove now the pin codes and all in order to get the data and find the insights out of it. The more filtered data you get, the only columns that you need, the more easy it will become to analyze that data, right? So that is your data transformation. Once you have transformed your data, you have done the basic data cleaning, it will be easy for you to then load the same data set to any of the data analytics tool. That can be either Power BI, either Tableau, SSMS, Alteryx, Airflows, or anywhere. Once you load the data, after that you can get the insights out of it. Okay, so this is the entire ETL process and a very common example by which a weather insights is calculated. So if you have any doubts, you can just park it in the comments as well, or if you wish, you can connect me through the link now also. Okay, now let's move ahead. So what is Azure? How is this Azure portal working on? This Azure portal depends upon 3 different types of softwares present inside it. So you might have heard about these 3 types of softwares. The very first is platform as a service, infrastructure as a service, and software as a service. So when we talk about any one specific service of Azure, like let's talk about Data Factory, which is used for data pipelining. So that is itself a software which allows me to perform some task, right? So that is called as my software as a service. When you might have got some projects where you have to work on virtual machines, connect the virtual machines through the remote desktop connection, and then perform some task on some data analytics tool, either SSMS or Power BIs. So what happen is you can create that virtual machine with the help of this Azure IaaS, that is infrastructure as a service. Okay, so this service is also available in Azure. The next and the very first service is basically the platform as a service, which provides the entire platform which is for analytics. Like Azure itself is a platform as a service, which is acting as a platform where you can do your data analytics, you can run your data sources, connect them, you can do the analysis and all. So Azure provides the services for all the types of softwares that we use in the market, and there are different services for supporting them, like SaaS is for Synapse Analytics, Microsoft Fabric, and there are different components in it. When we talk about infrastructure as a service, there are Azure VMs, the virtual machine generations, When we talk as a platform as a service, Azure itself is a platform to support them. Then apart from that, you can create the disk images inside Azure using Azure SQL databases images. So we'll see all about those services one by one. Right now, these are the basics and the types of service softwares which is supported by Azure portal. Okay, now let's move ahead to the data engineering. What exactly is data engineering and what are the types of data, some operations that we perform inside data engineering, so that we are going to understand now. So data engineering is basically when we deal with multiple types of data, multiple types of tools, multiple types of languages to perform some data operations in order to get some insights out of it. Ultimately, if I summarize this data engineering concept, this is exactly the similar to, you can say it as reducing the workload and automating the process is basically called as the data engineering. In data engineering, you get to deal with three different types of data. The number one is basically the structured data, where you get all the data in the form of rows and columns, that is in the structured phase, rows and columns in the tabular data. The semi-structured data, which is not having a fixed pattern, but if you wish, you can extract the data in a proper pattern using some tools. So that is your JSON file, XML files basically. And the non-structured data is basically your images, audios. When we try to get insights from the images, audios, some videos, some pattern out of it, that is called as non-structured data operations, okay, that we use to perform with the help of machine learning languages, some libraries of Python. So there we use the non-structured data. Now let's come to some of the data operations that we perform for data engineering, where with the help of which we can perform the analysis. The very first and the most important is basically the data integration. Data integration, the word now again itself define its concept. Integration means what? Integrating something, getting something inside some object, right? So integration means getting the data, migration of data migration from one source to another. That can be your local host system, some ERP, some CRM, some SQL database, some data visualization tool, or some any source connectors from where you will get all the data inside your Azure portal. So that is your first and the most important operations, that is called as data integration. The second is the data transformation, where we clean our data, where we clean all our data, our operations, everything. Some basic filtering of data is basically done in the process of data transformation. This is similar to ETL itself. And the last is data consolidation, means getting the data from multiple sources and collecting at one single location, that is extracting the data. So data operations are basically similar to your ETL itself. So these are some of the operations that you can perform within the domain of data engineering. And some of the languages that you are going to use inside it is basically SQL, Python, R, Java, Scala, and there are multi more languages. You can use any one of them. It's not the compulsory that you need to use the Python, you need to use R, Java, Scala. You can use SQL as well over there. So it can be integrated within the notebook. We'll see all those stuff. So these are some of the important concepts of data engineering that you need to understand. Okay, now let's come to the Azure directly. So Azure is one of my cloud analytics platform where you can create these services, where you can integrate these services inside the Azure portal. Let me just demonstrate you through the Azure portal as well. This is your Azure portal, and this Azure portal works on one simple concept, that you should be having one subscription in order to work with it. Either you should buy any subscription, because I have bought something, so I have my costs going on for my storage, for databases and everything, right? But let's say if you do not have any subscription, how can you work with that? So there is an option when you come to the subscription, you get to add a subscription inside it. Just a moment, let me open the subscription panel. So inside the subscription, I have one subscription present with me. That's why I'm going to which I'm going to use in order to work with it, and this is the current cost which I have consumed for this month. Now if I go to add an option, so there you can check your eligibility if you have any offer. Like if you are a student, you will get nearly 12 months of free credit plus to work with it, the Azure portal. So you can use these offers. You can go with pay as you go services. If you have the trial options available, you can use the trial also. So the very first thing, you need to select a subscription in order to work with it. Okay, in case if you require some passes, you can also get it from multiple people. There are multiple people who provide Azure passes in like multiple amounts it is present of. So you can also get the Azure passes sponsorships, and there are multiple ways which you can explore. Okay, so this way you need to have the very first thing, a subscription, in order to create anything inside the Azure portal. All right, now let's come back to it and let's see some of the services of Azure which can be used in order to work with your requirements. Like there is a category already built inside it. You can see here data stores is one category, data engineering and analytics is the another category. So data stores means what? Which all services you are going to use in order to store the data. So these are the four list of it. You can use the Azure SQL for storing a relational data, that is in the form of rows and columns. This image specifically you can also get it through my MS Learn, that is Microsoft Learn. I will put that link in the description, or you can also make a note of it that these are the list of the data stores that can be used within Microsoft Azure. Okay, SQL database is for creating relational tables, generating tabular data within it. Okay, to store the tabular data, Azure SQL is used. Open source is also used for the same, that is for storing a relational data. The Cosmos database is used for non-relational database system, which means you can also store semi-structured data and non-structured data inside this, but you cannot store non-structured data in SQLs or open source databases, Azure database. Okay, if you have some CSV file or TXT file where you have the data set, a large data set of 5 GB, 6 GB, 10 GB, so how you are going to deal with that? For that you need to work with your Azure Data Lake Gen 2, because CSV file or text file is also considered as a raw file, and in order to store any raw file you need to have a non-relational database. Okay, so your CSV file or TXT file is basically considered as a raw file which you can store in Azure storage, and after that by some processes we can convert that into tables in the relational format, and then you can perform the analysis. Okay, so we'll see that ahead. These are basically the list of 4 database services of Azure which you can use in order to store the data. Okay, now coming to the data engineering and analytics concept. So there are multiple tools or services you can say which is present in Azure in order to perform the analysis. Azure Data Factory is for data pipelining. Data pipelining means what? Pipeline anything from one source to another. If something enters in a pipeline, it cannot go out in between, right? So it will follow the entire path from point A to point B. Similarly, we can automate our task within the data pipeline. This is used for transforming the data or getting the data transferred from one location to another after some processes, and it can be automated too. Okay, so for that we use the Azure Data Factory tool which is for the data pipelining. Okay, the second tool is basically my Azure Synapse Analytics, which is also called as an end-to-end analytics tool, under which you can perform everything, every operation, whether data pipelining, your SQL database, Apache Spark, Data Explorer, everything that you can you need to perform in the data analytics tool, you can perform that on Synapse Analytics, and we are going to focus more on Synapse Analytics itself. Okay, then similarly, Databricks is one of the tool and services of Azure which is used in big data processing for large data to break into chunks and do the analysis. HD Insights is for open source Apache platform, which is also for big data services. Similarly, Stream Analytics is for real-time data processing through IoT solutions. Means real-time data means what? A real-time data generation, like within a second if our data is getting generated, like a cricket match, or let's take an example of a patient whose heartbeat is basically read. You cannot read the heartbeat of a person after an hour or after a day. You need to calculate that in a real time. So that is called as your real-time analytics, and for that we use Azure Stream Analytics. Okay, we'll see that also. Data Explorer is also for real-time data analysis for logometric and telemetry data. We will discuss that ahead. Purview is for the data analysis, data tracking, that where your data is going on. And Microsoft Power BI is one of the data visualization tool which is used for getting the pictorial representation of data. So this is very important slide where you can get to see all the services of Azure, and if you need to work on any of the services, just go on the search bar, mention their Synapse Analytics, and you will be able to see that Synapse. Okay, so here it is, Synapse Analytics. Whether that is SQL database, you will get to see SQL database, services, servers, virtual machines, anything. You just need to enter on the search box and you will get that resource. Okay, so we will see the overview of this portal. I have shown you the subscription and the searching option right now. We'll see the rest of the thing in the next video.